So there's a midrash about Moses. And Moses, when he was shepherding sheep in the wilderness, right around the time of seeing the burning bush, it says that while he was shepherding, and I'm saying this from memory, so forgive me for those of you that know this inside and out, that I might not say it quite right, but that when he was out shepherding, he recognized or he noticed that one of the sheep had left the flock. And so he goes and he starts searching for the sheep, and he's looking and he's looking and he's looking. And finally he comes across the sheep. And when he catches up to the sheep is drinking from a puddle. And Moses' reaction to it was, oh, you were thirsty. And I didn't realize it. And you left to go get something to drink. Now, for some reason, that's making me very emotional. But Moses doesn't get mad at the sheep. You get the impression reading the midrash that maybe it leaves room that Moses is kind of irritated about this sheep wandering off, and that there's a moment of him accepting rebuke in this moment when he sees, oh, you wandered off because you were thirsty, not because you were obstinate, not because you were irresponsible, not because of X, Y, Z, but because I didn't care for you the way you needed to be cared for. And so Moses allows the sheep to finish drinking and then carries the sheep back to the flock. And it says at that moment is when God knew that Moses was the right person to lead Israel out of Egypt. So I think that that's, when I have that story in my mind and I read this parable, it really hits home even harder.
Yeah.
Right? And I would imagine that at least there is some reasonableness to think that these Pharisees knew that midrash also.
Oh, okay.
And when Jesus starts telling this story, I imagine that the Pharisees were like, oh, yeah, I know how this one goes.
Yeah.
So any thoughts about that? To me, that's so...
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Yeah.
This discussion is making me think this for myself, but I'm also hoping other Christians would do this, is to first look within to see why someone wandered off. And I think that's possibly applicable, not just like in the larger church and people leaving it, but also maybe in our own relationships.
Yeah.
You know, things like that. And, you know, it's not 100% always going to be your fault, you know? But I think it's something that is worth pondering, because I think our first instinct is just to put the blame on the lost thing.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. The blame on the person who walked away.
Yeah.
I do think it's also helpful for us to recognize that right now, probably during the great deconstruction, as people are abandoning the church at some of the highest rates of the church's history, that what the church has done is made it out that the problem is the people leaving.
Right.
That they no longer want to hold the Bible as sacred. They no longer want to deal with the consequences of sin. Whatever diatribe and things you've heard thrown at people who right now, in this era of Christianity, are starting to wrestle with their long-held beliefs. It's rarely that leadership in the church pauses and say, oh, they were just thirsty.
Yeah.
And we weren't providing water that was suitable, right? And that they had to wander off because what the church was providing, what the shepherd was providing, was not sustainable for them. And I think that is, to me, the power of this parable in our current setting. I think there's value in it throughout history. I think that and all that, but I think in our current setting where people are deconstructing, the one thing I would want people who are deconstructing to know to their core is if you wandered off because you weren't getting what you needed to be for sustenance, that was a good reason to wander off and go get a drink. It's sad to me that there is not enough people out searching the countryside for sheep next to puddles.